Hi, everyone. It's Mandy. Before we go into it, patrons, you are everything. Thank you so much for being supporters of the show, supporters of the Restorative Grief platform everywhere it's found. Because I've been doing this for a while now, but I tell you, running with others makes it so much more enjoyable. So if you're interested in all the premium content, exclusive interviews coming up, or even just supporting the methods and the work because you know it makes an impact in your life and in others, then we would love to have you join us. Check out the show notes for links, and that's it. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart. You are listening to episode 58, titled Grieving What Could Happen. When we've experienced loss or the breaking of a connection in our lives, grief anxiety is often not far behind it. As we work toward healing, the way we see the world shifts. Sometimes this is for our good, but more often than not, our vision of the world morphs into a place that is unsafe, untrustworthy, and out of our control. So this week, we're going to learn a bit more about grief anxiety and identify ways that we might be able to help ourselves manage our anxiety with intention and compassion for our journey. Now that holiday season is in full swing, all of our regularly scheduled anxiety has pumpkin spice or peppermint flavor to it. Mine included. I'm well aware that holiday grief and anxiety are their entirely own packages to unravel. But today, I'm going to try and stay on the topic of regular old grief anxiety, that kind that exposes our most vulnerable fears about the future and everything we cannot influence or control on our own. Claire Bidwell Smith is a world-renowned grief expert and therapist and author, and in her latest book titled Anxiety, The Missing Stage of Grief, Bidwell Smith draws the line between our increasing anxiety and unresolved grief in our lives. Now that we are nearly 3 years into the COVID pandemic, we are witnessing firsthand how unaddressed grief manifests in our lives. I don't know about all of you, but personally, I feel as though the untended grief in my life is right at the surface, waiting to get through at any moment. Grief work through the restorative grief model allows us to engage ourselves as whole people: mind, heart, body, and spirit. Anxiety is a master at disrupting all four of those areas in our lives. For me, grief anxiety arrives in the form of intrusive thoughts about future loss. I feel my chest tighten, my shoulders raise, and my breath shorten as I fight back tears. The intrusive thoughts activate my emotions, and I feel nervous and powerless, exposed and overwhelmed. And because I know I'm outside of my usual self, I withdraw from people, canceling plans, staying home, waiting for the onslaught to pass, or finally succumb to all my mindfulness work. Even now, just talking about it, I can feel it trying to get some attention. So I'm going to probably agree that you do too. So before I go on, let's take a moment. Sometimes just pausing the conversation for a breath, even if it's awkward, is one of the most meaningful things we can do for ourselves and the people around us, because you can guarantee that they're picking up on the anxiety we're experiencing too. And often they don't know how to do anything about it. So sometimes just saying, "Hey, I need a minute," is a gift to both of you. But really, the fact that I experience grief anxiety as a grief professional means that anyone can experience it. It's not something we're meant to ignore, nor should we expect that a few quick meditations or even a breath will leave us healed. Anxiety is real and often ongoing. Our role, then, is to support ourselves as grievers by recognizing the connective tissue between the grief we've experienced and the anxiety that arises when that grief is activated. As a little note, you may have noticed that I've stopped using the word triggered and started saying activated. So I'm humbly inviting you to do the same, if only for consideration of those who've lost someone at the hands of gun violence. This language won't be an easy change to make because the word is ingrained in how we talk and think about trauma, and I get it. However, with a little humility, it is easy to correct yourself mid-sentence and change the way you speak, setting an incredible example of growth mindset for yourself and others by doing so. So let's see how it goes, even if it's just for a day. Try it out. Can you replace the word triggered with activated? Anyway, that's an aside. Back to anxiety, right? Oh, goodness. The reason we experience an increase of anxiety in our grieving lives is because grief exposes our fears about an unknown future. All of our questions, like what happens when we die? How will I live without this person? Can I really be safe if I'm vulnerable? Those questions come to the surface and they don't really have answers, do they? We see this anxiety play out in our dreams or our nightmares. They hold us back from participating in social events and connecting with people we love, and they keep us from expressing ourselves in relationships with trust and honesty too. Because really, as we learn more about what we are working through, we realize grief is always present. It's the uncomfortable undercurrent in our new life experience, and anxiety is a companion at its side. Let me share this little blurb about Bidwell Smith's book because if you're experiencing anxiety that feels out of control, I do think this book is a great resource for you. There's also a workbook on her website as a free offering to go along with it. On her site, it writes, with concrete tools and coping strategies for panic attacks, getting a handle on anxious thoughts, and more, anxiety, the missing stage of grief, bridges these two emotions in a way that is deeply empathetic and eminently practical. And that's what we're after, right? Something practical to keep in our pocket for the moments that we recognize grief anxiety is interrupting us. So, whether or not you obtain a copy of the book, and remember, you can ask your local library to purchase a copy for borrowing. Let's go through at least one strategy for anxiety support today. Remember, as if you forgot, anxiety creates a sense of dread in our lives through intrusive thoughts, but we can interrupt those thoughts and introduce new ones by grounding ourselves through whole self practices that address our thoughts, emotions, feelings, and connection to self and others. Our grief anxiety is real, and we don't want to deny that. But this grief anxiety is tied to a loss. It's not necessarily a death, of course, but that means we can build a connection to that understanding and better manage our anxiety itself. Even if moments of anxiety induce panic attacks, or as I love to call them, thanks to Joshua Fletcher from Untangle Your Anxiety, adrenaline floods, they're expected. Adrenaline floods are a natural way for your body to try and power you up for self protection. It's just that in grief, because we've been hurt, we're always in self protection mode, and that doesn't help us heal. Do you remember the window of tolerance concept? Self protection is when that window slams shut and sometimes gets locked or painted shut. So, one of my favorite ways to address the internal experience of anxiety and adrenaline floods is to externalize them. When I'm in the middle of an episode or a flood, I start speaking aloud about it to try and notice where I'm experiencing it in my body as well. So, it literally sounds like this. Oh, this is anxiety. This is an adrenaline flood. Physically, I am in a place where I'm safe. And if that's not true, I'll move myself. I can feel my heartbeat is increasing and I notice that my muscles are tensing. Maybe I'm feeling it in my back. Am I feeling it in my thighs, my knees, my feet, my hands? Whew, okay, I'm going to take a moment and change the way my body is feeling and move into a different position. I'm going to try standing. I'm going to try taking a deep breath. And I'm going to hold it for 5 seconds before I exhale. Do all of these questions and statements seem awkward? Because good. I want it to be awkward. Anxiety and grief are uncomfortable, and our goal is not to find a way to make everything comfortable and not have to experience the heaviness of it. Not at all, because the uncomfortable nature of grief and anxiety is not going to change. However, when we notice the discomfort, we have a chance to build our tolerance for the discomfort. It's literally building an internal muscle for us. So, as you're narrating your actions, find a way to move into a different space. Maybe you're indoors and you take a step outside. Maybe you're driving a car and you pull over to stand up for a moment. Maybe you're in an airplane and you can pace the aisle for a moment. But if not, this is another place where it's completely reasonable to put your fingers in your ears or turn on headphones for white noise, drop your head between your knees, go to the bathroom and do some soft breathing with yourself. You can just put something over your head and create a less stimulating visual environment, right? However you choose, changing your environment in the littlest way while you articulate these thoughts and acknowledgments about anxiety can interrupt all the intrusive thoughts and the adrenaline flood. You can literally wait it out by talking about it and disarming the power that it carries. because your mind is assuming this is the worst, scariest thing. And it makes sense. Your body's reacting as if that's true. But with these interruptive statements, your mind has to start thinking about them and the present moment, which allows you to start acknowledging where you are, to feel more grounded and connected to what is real and what is true around you. This does not resolve the issues of grief anxiety, but it does set you on the path of realizing that our nightmares about the future are just that. They're figments of our imagination. We cannot predict the future. We can't change it with our thoughts. We cannot cause someone's death by meditating about it or ruminating on it. And we can't break up with a loved one through a dream. So these little grounding actions return a sense of control to the moment and allow us to make a different choice on the other side of that action too. Thank you for listening to episode 58 of Restorative Grief. If you're like me and carry a significant amount of grief anxiety or plain old vanilla anxiety, I highly recommend both books I mentioned by Claire Bidwell Smith and Joshua Flesher. I've linked the books themselves in the show notes so you can find them easily. Both are full of insight, brilliant interventions, medical data, and yet they're written in a language that's conversational and approachable. If that kind of reading overwhelms you, I will just share that I like reading in really small bites, especially with nonfiction like this. So a few pages or a single concept at a time, and it helps me avoid additional overwhelm. If this is your first time, however, listening to Restorative Grief, thank you for being here. Every week we have really touchy conversations, and hopefully they invite you to consider your own story a little differently and with a new bend toward hope, help, and healing. Please take time to leave a review of the show wherever you listen, and feel free to share this episode with anyone you love, because I think at some point we're all suffering from grief anxiety without recognizing it. And if you're interested in learning more about restorative grief, don't forget to subscribe and check out the show notes, because we have a ton of free and cost-effective resources to support you as you pursue healing. And last but not least, one last thing. Please remember, the only solution for grief is to do the work of grieving. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week.